Don't take my language. Don't pretend your sausage roll's a real sausage roll. Shut up and go away. I don't come into your gruel restaurants ever and shout about what you do to the bee community in California.
So Piers Morgan recently appeared on the Diary of a CEO podcast because he's now making media appearances again due to his new TV show where he promises to tell it like it is, which is perhaps the most boringly predictable thing ever. But anyway, in the podcast, Piers talks about the vegan sausage roll that was released by Greggs because, well, he's Piers Morgan, so of course he does. Although it must be said, if one of the things that makes you notable as an individual is your continuous dislike of a vegan sausage roll that was released over 3 years ago, then it suggests there's not that much interesting or notable about you.
And I saw Greg saying, the wait is over. Finally, it's here, the vegan sausage roll. I said, what on earth are you talking about? Who's been waiting for a vegan sausage roll? Apart from anything else, I agree with the French, where it's illegal to market vegetarian or vegan products using meat language. A sausage roll is meat. If vegans want to eat their gruel, fine. Go and have a joyless existence munching your lentils. Don't take my language. Don't pretend your sausage roll's a real sausage roll. The French have made it illegal. You can't use meat language to sell vegan products. I think we should go the same way. You have your world and we'll have ours.
So the free speech pioneer is trying to censor language and speech and dictate what words others can use. Funny that. Now, this argument is a really tired and old argument, and to be honest, I kind of thought that we'd moved past this argument by this point, but that's something you'll notice about the arguments that Piers uses. They're not arguments that he's created himself or arguments he's spent time actually reflecting on and critically analysing. They're just sensationalist arguments that get lots of conversation in the media. Now, I doubt that Piers is actually that bothered that vegan sausages get called sausages. Moreover, the reason I think that he uses this argument is because it's something that appears in the press, or at least it used to quite a lot until fairly recently, and because it's a topic of conversation that causes outrage amongst a lot of people. And because Piers is a contrarian, those are the arguments that he's interested in, ones that cause outrage. This is why he says he's against vegan sausages being called sausages, but doesn't also say that he's against peanut butter being called butter, even though peanut butter isn't actually butter. This is also the reason that he refers to lentils as being gruel.
Go and have a joyless existence munching your lentils.
Nobody thinks lentils are gruel. Lentils are obviously great, and Piers himself probably eats lentils. But this is one of the things that Piers does. He uses specifically inflammatory language so that he creates an over-the-top response to the things that he's talking about. And by creating an over-the-top response, he creates a fabricated sense of outrage. Saying, oh, eat lentils if you want to eat lentils doesn't really cause any outrage. But calling lentils gruel and saying that vegan food is disgusting and saying that vegans are hypocrites and they should just enjoy their gruel in peace is an over-the-top response which creates outrage, which he has fabricated and riles everyone up. One of the things I often find really confusing about the conversation around Piers Morgan is when people say that they admire him for speaking his mind or for telling it like it is or for not being afraid of voicing his opinion. It's like we've lost all ability to critically analyze a situation and to analyze someone's motivations behind the way that they're acting. Piers isn't telling it like it is. He says the things that he says because it's the only thing that keeps him relevant. He's putting on a persona precisely because that persona is something that makes people interested in him. He's not speaking his mind or telling it as it is. He's saying the things that create outrage and anger because outrage and anger get people to listen and rile people up, which makes them emotionally invested in what he is saying. He's literally saying things because they draw attention to him, not because they necessarily reflect any substantiated viewpoint. Case in point, in the summer of 2020, Piers Morgan criticised a Labour MP who joined one of the BLM protests in the UK, calling him irresponsible and reckless. But then, the next day, it transpired that Piers' own son also joined a BLM protest in London, at which point Piers said that he was very proud of his son. Or could it be that Piers is simply an unprincipled contrarian who isn't actually voicing his opinion, but is saying things to create attention around himself? Ironically, one of the only times that Piers has actually played a more nuanced and real performance of himself was during his CNN talk show, which was cancelled by CNN for low ratings, which kind of says it all, doesn't it?
Do I care? Look, I don't care as much as I do about Ukraine, but in the moment, it really annoyed me that there was a presumption we'd all been waiting for a vegan sausage roll. And I was also annoyed that you were seeing stories of vegans charging into state restaurants and playing music of cows being killed. I was like, shut up and go away. I don't come into your gruel restaurants ever and shout about what you do to the bee community in California when you eat your almonds and almond milk, right? Billions of bees exterminated every year in a 6-week cull in California so vegans can eat almonds and eat avocados. Utter hypocrisy around vegan food that somehow they're leaving the animals alone when they exterminate the little guys, the bees. And I feel sorry for the bees. No one, you ever hear vegans talk about bees, do you? It's always the big animals. They care about cows, not the little guys. I'm a little guy. I'm the Robin Hood of this debate. I look after the little guys against the sheriffs of Nottingham.
Sure.
So similar to the vegans using words like sausage to describe their food products, this one about almond production and bees is just another sensationalist media talking point, which Piers knows will create some form of outrage around what he's saying. Firstly, those bees are honeybees, which means they're bred by beekeepers who are actually using them for honey, but then rent them out to almond farmers so they can also make some extra money on the side. So if you're complaining about what happens to bees in almond farming, well then of course I'm sure you're against the honey industry in the US as well, and of course don't buy honey produced by US farmers, because the reason those honeybees exist in the first place and are rented to almond farmers is because of the honey industry. Also, I'm not necessarily sure what Piers is referring to with the 6-week cull remark. The main cause of death for bees is due to the chemicals and pesticides that are used in the agricultural system in the US, not because of some deliberate cull. And importantly, if you don't like how almonds are produced in California, then simply don't buy almonds that are produced in California. It's not a requirement of veganism to buy Californian almonds. It's very easy to avoid doing so. So if you don't like it, just don't pay for it. And instead, you can consume something like oat milk, because oats self-pollinate and they don't require any bees in that process. So I guess that means that Piers Morgan can now be vegan, considering he doesn't have to buy Californian almonds after all. Or potentially, as the case might be, Piers is saying what he says not because he actually cares about bees, but because he's more interested in portraying vegans as hypocrites. And people always make these appeal to futility arguments where they say things like, veganism isn't perfect, so you're a hypocrite. And of course, the reality is veganism isn't perfect. Nothing is perfect. But what veganism is a reduction of the harm that we are causing, both environmentally and ethically. And on the point of bees being used for pollination, how do you think the animal feed that is pollinated? People go, oh, it's so terrible that all of these bees are being used to pollinate almonds in California to make almond milk, whilst at the same time overlooking that these same bees are used to pollinate alfalfa, which is a primary food source used in the dairy industry for dairy cows. And as a consequence, these bees are used, exploited, and killed to pollinate feed that is used for dairy cows, who are obviously used to produce cow's milk. So I guess that means that bees being used for almond milk is bad, but bees being used for cow's milk is absolutely fine. People don't make these kinds of arguments because they actually care about the well-being of bees. Case in point, the majority of the almonds that are grown and consumed are consumed by non-vegans. These arguments are made because people are desperate to find any Achilles heel in the vegan argument, anything that suggests that they might be wrong. And look, is the agricultural system ideal? No, of course it's not. But the agricultural system that we have now was created with the mindset that animals don't deserve moral consideration and can be used as we please for things that we want. The whole agricultural system was created using that mindset. And so now vegans are ironically being accused of hypocrisy because of an agricultural system that was created by non-vegans and was created by non-vegans who have the mindset that animals can be used and exploited as we please. So just to simplify the argument right down, the reason why vegans are hypocrites and being vegan is bad, and as a consequence, doing all the things that we do to animals currently is morally justified, is because in California, almond farmers who are not vegan work with beekeepers who are obviously not vegan, to create almonds, the vast majority of which are consumed by non-vegans, and if you really cared, you could avoid in the first place. That's the reason why being vegan is bad and hypocritical.
But the whole thing to show me that everyone was allowed to love vegan sausage rolls, but if you deviated from that and said you hated them, you had to be destroyed. This wasn't acceptable. The woke brigade had decided vegan sausage rolls were untouchable. You had to support them. You had to think they were great. This was brilliant.
Oh, Piers, nobody tried to destroy you because you didn't like the Greggs vegan sausage roll. You were being mocked because you made a fool out of yourself. You weren't being cancelled. You were being laughed at.
Delicious, actually.
Because they've got the same seasoning.
Oh, God.
I like them. They've got nice crisp pastry.
Yeah.
The vegetarian sausage is nicely flavoured.
And for someone who likes to complain about victim mentalities, Piers Morgan sure does a good job of portraying himself as a victim.
Even though they're bad for you, literally worse for you than a McDonald's cheeseburger, in terms of salt and calorie intake.
And of course the Greggs vegan sausage roll is bad for you. It's not meant to be the equivalent of a kale salad. It's meant to be the equivalent of a meat-based sausage roll, which is precisely what it is. And this is how you know that Piers makes bad faith arguments, because nobody thinks that the Greggs vegan sausage roll tastes disgusting and the regular Greggs sausage roll tastes amazing. They taste almost identical, a point which is recognized by so many people, hence why so many people like the Greggs vegan sausage roll, precisely because it is such a good substitute. Even nutritionally, in terms of calories and salt, the two things that Piers Morgan seems to be really concerned about, the Greggs vegan sausage roll is almost identical in both those regards to the non-vegan sausage roll also sold at Greggs, because that's what it's meant to be replicating. It's not supposed to be healthy. Why on earth would it be? And just to end on a slightly more serious point, Piers wants to talk about hypocrisy. And there's probably a good reason why he's so eager for his persona to be defined by things like outrage around the vegan sausage roll, rather than defined by actual controversial issues that he has been somewhat associated with, such as the time that he was fired as the editor of the Daily Mirror because they published faked photographs of supposed torture in the Middle East. Turned out that actually those photographs were taken in the north of England, not the Middle East, and were a hoax. Or how when he was the editor of the Daily Mirror, illegal phone hacking was taking place. Now, Piers denies all knowledge of the phone hacking and yet oversaw articles that were published with information that only was obtained and only could have been obtained because of the phone hacking. And actually, lawyers who are currently working on behalf of some of the victims of the phone hacking that took place at the Daily Mirror during the time when Piers was the editor have said that there is no way that he couldn't have known about it, and that it's inconceivable that he wouldn't have been aware of where this information was coming from. But I'm sure Piers is just another victim of cancel culture. And I wonder if complaining about having your phone illegally hacked by a newspaper is also just another example of the virtue signalling woke brigade in action. So that brings us to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed my responses to the sensationalist arguments that Piers Morgan loves to use against veganism, and I am sure, no doubt, we'll hear him use in the very near future as well. All right, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Let me know down below in the comments what you think of the arguments that Piers uses, and I guess Piers Morgan more generally. And I will see you all in the next video.